Hey there, this is Kevin McCarthy, and I want to just talk with you a little bit about an article that I posted on my blog. It's called When Success Starts to Feel Like Selling Out. This is really part of a series of on-purpose messages that I'm preparing. So what I really want you to think about is, have you ever gotten to that place where you sort of roll your eyes back in your head and say, how did I ever get here? It was not my intention to be where I am, and I don't mean that in the good way, but I mean in the bad way. Perhaps you're a very successful business person, but your marriage is in shambles. Your children hate you. Your bank account is great, but the rest of your life is not. Or perhaps you've just gotten to the place where you were an athlete all your life, and you have been, you retired from your athletic endeavors. Now you're working in the world and you just are putting on weight, and you're getting to this place where you're just neglecting yourself. These are the sort of things where sometimes the benefits of our success and our pursuit of success starts to create this idea of selling out. And what are you selling out? And so what I want to do is just sort of walk you through this article. I'm going to read a little bit of it for you, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it basically starts off with what happens when from the outside your life looks good, your work and you are highly respected, your calendar's full, your income is solid, you're productive, reliable, and admired, and by most measures you're succeeding, but something is off. Selling out in this context isn't a matter of greed, moral failure, or succumbing to bribery. We're not talking about sinister motives because you're a good, upstanding person. In other words, it's not like you're doing something criminal here, where you've sold out the national secrets of the United States or something, like you're a spy or something like that. No, it's really just kind of a slow, gradual sense of maybe a small compromise here or there, and then it starts to sort of take on a life of its own. I've often thought of it as it's like a thread of a decision you make that leads to another decision which you don't really like, but it's not that big. But that thread then adds another thread, and pretty soon that thread becomes a string, and then that string, another of these decisions, it becomes a cord, and pretty soon it becomes a rope, and it becomes a rope that you're unable to break because it's got a hold of you at that point. And so what we're really looking at is this idea of this is what selling out is. It's where you feel you're captive to a series of decisions that maybe were small little decisions that over time they compounded to something else. So this idea of sort of what selling out really means. So selling out isn't, as it says here, it isn't about making money or achieving success. It's about small compromises over time. And that where it actually gets you to a place where you feel out of character. It's not who you want to be or who you want to become. You can look at the trajectory and say, if I stay on this path, it's not going to work out well. Something's going to have to give. And this is that idea of selling out that happens. So here's some examples in here where it talks about, I'm saying yes when your gut says you should say no. You're staying busy to avoid pondering deeper questions. In other words, busyness is one of those things. Another action down here, it says, is just getting lost in entertainment. Maybe you're playing video games, or you're doom scrolling on your phone, or you're just doing whatever it takes to distract your mind from really addressing the problem, because addressing the issue that's going on burns a lot of brain cells. It tires you out, and you're already tired, or maybe you're not sleeping well as a result. It's, for a lot of us that are independent consultants, perhaps independent professionals, or even business owners, we take on work that pays the bills but drains our soul. That is just something that I've just seen where a lot of times it's just like, I just need to make money, and the pressure to make money is so high that we just take whatever it is and do the work. We do a good quality of work for it, but relative to the value proposition for us, it's not profitable work because it costs us so much in terms of our time, energy, and efforts, and it takes us away from other things we could be doing. Here's this one, which is engaging in entertainment while neglecting responsibilities. And then this is sort of the one that I call the resignation. It's kind of getting to this place where you just recognize or you admit that this is just the way things are. This is the way my life is going to be. And you have resigned yourself to this less than state. And that's that idea of selling out. Now, a lot of times though, the reality is, from the outside, it looks like you're making progress. People say, oh my gosh, you've got the world by the tail. You're just, you've got the house, you got the wife, you got the money, you got the fancy car, you got it made, dude. What's going on? Why are you complaining? But on the inside, you feel like just crap. And so this distress that you feel is something that you can't necessarily verbalize to a lot of people, because they look at it and they think you got it made. But on the inside, it's eating you alive. So let's talk about what selling is not. You can see this one right here. This talks about you can be successful, well compensated without selling out. In other words, you don't have to be a sellout. That's really what I'm attempting to do, is help you reorient or reorder your life in such a way that you can get out of this mode that you find yourself in that you don't like. Selling out is not lack of ambition or responsibility. In other words, I'm actually all for you. Go make money, go be ambitious, do all these sorts of things, but don't sell out in the process. It is not about foregoing your family or failing to get the job done. It is really stepping up and being truly responsible. That's what got you to where you are. But it's a matter of shifting some of the dynamics. So selling out only occurs when success comes at the expense of your identity and purpose. This is that trigger of your identity and your purpose, when you feel deep in your soul that something is wrong, something's off, and you don't like the person you are becoming. That's the warning signs, if you will. There's some additional warning signs we're going to talk about. So and a lot of times what happens is there's almost a form of distance that begins to occur where you're sort of separating yourself from the action. And maybe not the best analogy, but I'm going to use it. It's kind of like what Nazis would say after World War II, where they would say, I'm just doing my job. I was just doing my job. But morally, they might have had deep convictions about something that was going on. And so at some level, when you have that sense of, well, that's just the way business is, or that's just the way it is, that's whenever you know that your spirit is being slowly but surely eaten away, and you start to dislike who you are becoming. Some of the quiet warning signs. The most reliable signal that you're selling out is guilt or stress. You're probably experiencing guilt or stress. It's this numbness, what I call secret apathy that sets in. You care, but you really don't care. You're sort of faking your way through it. A lot of people call it the imposter syndrome, but you know what it's like. It's almost as though you're sitting there with somebody that you really care about, and you're looking them in the eye, but your mind is elsewhere. You're not really engaged in what is happening. In a way, the emotional disconnect, if it's with somebody that you really care and love about, it's that you recognize you've fallen out of love. And that happens with businesses. You can fall out of love with your business. You can fall out of love with your spouse. You can fall out of love with your children because they're just so difficult, or whatever it may be. It doesn't mean that you don't love them, but you have a different kind of experience going on, where you find yourself gradually distancing yourself from them and less engaged. To some extent, that may be an emotional protection that's going on. But the fact is if you recognize that you're beginning to do that distancing, it's an important warning sign for you that you're in the process of selling out in the way that I'm using it here. Why you're so vulnerable. First of all, you're successful. A lot of people want to get to you, and there's a lot of action that is going on around you. You make things happen. So as a result, your time is spread. Your time is precious. Everybody wants to get a piece of you. And so what happens is you can begin to start sort of gradually selling out. So, and as it says here, the problem, whoops, let me not move me here. The problem is that your success is rewarding their very behaviors that created your disorienting situation. So you have this pattern of working your way through things, which is a healthy, good habit to have. Nothing wrong with that. But what happens is you now see these compromises that are going on, and things are coming at you because success begets success. You get into the place of where your business has you being extraordinarily busy. And so at some level, you want to keep up the momentum that you have. That's your provision, and yet you know that at some level there's something going on within you. So this isn't a sign of failure. It is success for something that no longer fits. In other words, it's the old story of leaning your ladder up against a wall, and you get to the top of the wall and you look over and you say, that's not what I really thought I was getting. It takes you right back to that question of, how did I get here? So we want to talk about reframing success without selling out. So success is no longer what you can accumulate. It's not betraying who you are. In a word, success becomes authenticity. You're not faking it anymore. You're not doing the imposter syndrome. You're being true to who you really are. You're beginning to now look at it and say, how do I remove these ill-fitted roles that I find myself in? And the bottom line is, you're stepping up to be a leader of your life. Now, interestingly, this is part of the process of growing up, of coming into maturity. Some people reach it very young, some people don't. Some people can be extraordinarily successful on the outside, but failing on the inside because their inner life hasn't kept up with their outer life. And so this is an important element of how to have the internal infrastructure of your life in your private and personal life that can support this public persona. Because when these things are out of sync or out of whack, then you have this fear of exposure that begins to set in. So here's 6 authenticity anchors. What you're looking at is, you want to be true to who you are, integrity. And integrity, a lot of people think that means honesty, but that really means consistency, a consistent structure that is in place. So it speaks more about structural integrity. That's where I talk about purpose, vision, mission, and values, and then putting the plans in place so that you're living that out. That's the sort of thing, as opposed to just taking the optic, what looks good. Sustainability over expediency. This is a longer term mindset over just, I'll fix the problem now, I'll just move on and hope that it works, and as opposed to really dealing with things in a way. And again, this is a really high risk thing, which is, I call it the quick fix mindset that you can get into, where you're looking at whatever I need to do, and because there's so many decisions coming at you, you're just making decisions without necessarily always the most informed decision compared to what you used to do. And that's part of the way you get into some real challenges here. Stewardship over indifference. Stewardship is a really important word to me, because it's saying that you're caring for that which is entrusted with you. And you've been entrusted with your life, you've been entrusted with a family. If you're a business owner, you've got employees. If you're a professional athlete, you've got teammates and other people that are on your team who are relying upon you. There's all these different aspects that are going on. If you're an actor, the other actors are relying upon you, caring for your role. Another real authenticity anchor is, you're choosing meaning over materialism. At some level, you realize that the money or the things are not fulfilling, but you're seeking for that deeper meaning. Next one is strategy over trial and error. A lot of times, if you talk to a lot of people who've been successful, they will often use the words, I got lucky. They did a lot to create their luck and their opportunity, and sometimes they just got lucky. They were at the right place at the right time. Nothing wrong with that. But at some level, you can't bank on luck. So you want to be strategic. And what I see is, a lot of times whenever there's something that's going on where you feel like you're selling out, there's this idea almost that if I just try this, I'll just try whatever I can, as opposed to just sort of quietly stepping back, being still, and being thoughtful, even if it's just a matter of taking some deep breaths and then thinking, okay, I'm not going to act right now. I'm going to take a more strategic approach. I'm going to look at my options, and I'm going to think through what's going on. And then simplicity over complexity. Oh my gosh. That's almost self-explanatory. Because what happens is life is complex, relationships are complex, and at the end of the day, if your relationships are extraordinarily complex, keep it really simple. And just, if you look your spouse or your child in the eye and just say, look, at the end of the day, we may have all sorts of complex things that are going on, but I want you to know that I love you. I care for your well-being. We may be on a very different page right now, but that doesn't change my unconditional love for you. That's making it very simple when it's very complex. In a business environment, you can look at much the same way. You can come back and there's a very difficult situation that may be going on with a customer. And at the end of the day, you can just say to the customer, look, I really care about you and I want to do right by you. So you tell me what would be the best thing for you. I'm happy to leave the relationship, but I will fix it before I go because I don't want to ruin my reputation with you, but I also don't want you to continue to feel like you have to badger me or that we're not serving you well. You just make it very simple. I'm here to serve. It's not about the money, although there may be a lot of money involved, but it's going to be, I'm going to do what's right, because at the end of the day, going back to sustainability over expediency, it's your reputation that matters. That's what really makes the difference. And then why on purpose? Being on purpose happens when success is defined internally and expressed externally with intentionality. Selling out happens when success is predominantly defined externally. So what happens is, if you find that you're caught up in all the trappings, you are a major risk of having your world come tumbling down, and you find out at the end that there's nothing on the inside. There's nobody around you anymore because you've sold out. And all I'm saying is, I want to show you a way that you can build from the inside out, truly, as most people know what it means to build from the inside out, but how to actually do that. So what I'm really saying here is, don't step back from your duties. It may be a good strategy for you to do that for a period of time, but don't step back. Don't abandon ambition, making money, or career advancement. Roar into the marketplace. However, step up, broaden your definition of success so your inner life can comfortably sustain your outer life. Grow up by getting your life in order on purpose. Now, I have this free download right here where you can download this 3-step guide to being on purpose, success without selling out. Real quickly, it has a little piece from the On Purpose Person, my first book, and it just sort of talks about success. Then it invites you to write your 2-word purpose statement, because you can't be on purpose unless you know your purpose. And it gives you a little simple structure to do that. And then the 3rd step is talking about your purpose, vision, mission, and values, because purpose alone, while it holds it all like a light going through a prism, and it reveals vision, mission, and values, at some level, though, it's these things are the full spectrum of strategy that you need, what I call deep strategy. And then based on that, you're invited to you're invited to declare, do I want to be an on-purpose person? Do I want to be, is this the lifestyle that I want? Do I want to live more deeply from the inside out? And then if you sign off on that, I invite you to, in the document, there's a way that you can reach out to me, and I'll do a free consult with you for 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it takes. It'll be all about you. Yes, I do have a program called Life Ordered on Purpose. That's a coaching program. Yes, I do have other opportunities and things, but this, at the end of the day, at this age and stage of my life, it's really about how can I help as many people be on purpose. And if it's just a matter that, 45 minutes to an hour, you get on track and you're happy with where things are, you know what? You've made my day, because I've been able to serve a good person who's in maybe a situation that they want to improve, and that way I've helped you to be on purpose. So this is Kevin McCarthy inviting you to become an on-purpose person, and let's hopefully this idea of selling out is one that you're beginning to look more deeply at yourself and saying, some of that's going on and I need to fix that sooner rather than later before it gets worse. Looking forward to connecting with you. God bless, and be on purpose.